getting him to Isaiah makes zero sense.
Yeah, thanks for clearing that up for everyone.
Everyone just stopped listening.
Welcome to another episode of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. We are a nerd culture podcast that discusses nerddom through various segments. You can find us at thenerdspodcast.com, and you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter through our handle at the Nerds Podcast. If you'd like to reach us directly, you can email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. And additionally, each of us have Letterboxd accounts. If you're unfamiliar, Letterboxd is social media for watching movies, and I'm at that Tyler Hunt on Letterboxd. My co-host Pat can be found at the Nerds Podcast on that platform. So with all of that being said, and without further ado, alongside me, as always, is my co-host Pat Attack. What's up, man? How are you?
Just being honest, I'm pretty exhausted. Work's been crazy the last couple of weeks. I feel like I say that a lot, so maybe just like default, I'm usually pretty busy at work. But my wife, Chrissy, texted me about, I think it was like noonish, and she's like, hey, I just got to work and my low tire pressure light came on. I think I might have run something over. And I was like, well, just because that light comes on doesn't mean that you ran something over. Like, is it flat? And she's like, yeah, it's a little low, but it's not like flat. She's like, I can just fill it up like after I get off work, and I can take care of it tomorrow. And I was like, well, we have that motor club. Call the motor club, because this has happened a lot. So I literally got the motor club through my work for this exact situation. And she was like, well, I'm closing by myself, and like I don't want to have to like shut down the store to like walk this guy out to the garage and show him where it is. And I was annoyed because I knew what she wanted. I knew she just wanted me to be like, it's fine, I'll go take care of it, but I'm at work right now, and it's going to be a couple hours before I leave. And I was annoyed because, first of all, obviously, I don't want to do that because it's just a pain in the ass. I've done it before, but it sucks, and I don't want to have to do it. But of course, we're a team. We help each other out. So like, I'm going to do it. But she was like being weird, and like, I think she wanted me to suggest it instead of like just asking me. So that was a little bit annoying. And then also, I'm not over exaggerating when I say this, I have changed a tire on my car one time in my life. I've changed I've like helped people, like ex-girlfriends and stuff like that before. So I've changed more than that. But on her cars, I've changed it 6 times.
God damn.
6 times. I don't know if she's driving around with a fucking magnet or what. So it's so annoying. And every time, I'm like, hey, do you want me to show you how to do this so you don't have to call me? Like, you can just take care of it. Like, you're a grown up, you should be able to take care of this. And nope, I'm good. I'll call the motor club. And then every time she doesn't want to call the motor club. And why am I paying for this? And also, why am I doing it? If you like refuse to learn how to do it and you won't call the motor club, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not a car guy, but changing a tire is literally, in my opinion, I don't know where you stand on this, Tyler, but it's like working a washing machine. It's just like, you're an adult. It's just something that you should know how to do to survive the world. Like, I don't know how you don't know how to do it. It's so easy.
Yeah, so I have not changed a lot of tires in my life. Luckily, I've probably done it once, but up until a few weeks ago. So a few weeks ago, I got to work, and when I left work, I had a big screw in my tire, and so I had to change it. And I struggled for a second, but then it came back to me like riding a bike, and I got it changed. And so the point I'm trying to make is, I understand it's a skill you don't hopefully use often, but to your point, it's easy. it's one of those things you learn how to do in the first few years you're driving, hopefully before you start driving, and then you shouldn't forget it. And if you do forget it, YouTube has got everything.
Yeah.
So, there's really no excuse outside of just not wanting to do it.
Yeah, so it was pretty annoying. I went to her work after I got off work, and she has to park like a couple blocks away. And so I had to park in the parking garage and then walk to her work, get her keys, walk back. I had to move her car with a flat tire because maybe it had gotten worse because this was a couple hours, but it was flat. It wasn't like low. There's a big chunk of metal in it, and it was flat. And so I had to move it slowly, and because it was in a parking garage, so it was on a slope, I couldn't jack it up like that. And so I had to move it like kind of on the street, but not like on the street. And so of course I'm changing the tire, and guys are walking by asking if they could help me. And I'm like, I kind of felt like, not to be a dick, I know they were just trying to be nice, but I kind of felt like Ron Swanson when he goes to Lowe's and the guy comes up to him, he's like, I know more than you. It's like, I got my fucking hydraulic jack, I got my torque wrench. I'm like, there was one guy that came up to me and he was like, do you have everything you need? I was like, motherfucker, I got the tire off. The tire's already off. Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, that was interesting. I mean, again, they were just trying to help, but it was a little annoying because I was hot and sweaty and tired and I didn't want to do it anymore. But like, yeah, I was home in an hour. Like I left work and I got home and it was like an hour later. So it literally, if she would just learn how to do it, it's like 10 minutes.
Sure.
It's literally like 10 minutes. And so that was my day today. And I got home and I was pretty exhausted.
Yeah, I can imagine you're maybe a little grumpy then.
Yeah, it's not the best mind space to be in to record this episode, but I'll be all right. I did want to bring up that I did have a great time at the Blink-182 concert. We talked about that last episode. Yeah. It was awesome. I loved it. They sounded great. They played for like an hour and a half, which was awesome. They put on such a good show. I will say, and I brought this up a little bit last episode, but I mean, they're like 50 years old and still making dick jokes in between songs. Yeah, I was like, I get it. Me and my buddy were talking about it as we were driving home. And he was like, I think they probably just made the decision. It's like, this is the Blink-182 experience people expect. And they're just going to give everybody the experience that they expect. And to a certain extent, I respect that. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't need this anymore. They sounded awesome, though. It's probably the best sounding concert I've ever been to. Now I go to a lot of like emo punk shows. So it's like, it's not the best setup, but yeah, they sounded awesome.
Yeah, good, man. I know that you were curious about what it would be like in the lawn. Was it good for you?
I loved it.
Yeah, good.
It was awesome. We got a good spot. And what bothers me about concerts, and it's just one of those things, being a person that's like 5'7", I just kind of come to expect now it's going to be really hard for me to see. And what typically will happen is we always go early enough where we can get a good spot. We can see the openers because I love seeing like bands I've never seen before, especially, I mean, if I respected the band that I'm going to see, which obviously I do, like a lot of times it's going to be the same music. Like sure. A lot of times what I'll do to like find new music is I'll just find the bands that I love and see the bands that are touring with them. And if I've never heard of them, I'll listen to them on Spotify and check them out, even if I'm not going to the show. And so I've found a lot of really cool bands doing that. So like we'll go see the openers and we'll have great spots for the openers. And then of course when the headliners come, that's when the floor starts to like fill in, and I ended up not being able to see all that well, but that's just the nature of being kind of a small guy. The lawn, there was none of that shit. People had like their fucking picnic blankets and shit out, and they had their chairs and all that stuff. So like we set up shop with our blanket, sat there, and obviously when Alkaline Trio came out, we stood up, and then when Blinks came on, we stood up. But like there was nobody like trying to get in front of us or doing anything like that. So we had great view. It was awesome.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'm glad you guys had a good time.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I felt bad because I didn't know Matt Hurt from The Obsessive Viewer was going to be there.
Oh,
So yeah, he was there. So I got to hang out with him. I was not aware that he was coming.
when was the last time you saw him?
I don't know, man. It would have been an indie PopCon probably.
Wow.
Or maybe a Shocktober in Irvington.
Yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, the last Shocktober in Irvington I went to was the one that we participated in, and that was forever ago.
Yeah, I still lived in Evansville. It was pre-2017.
Yeah, so I doubt that that's the last time I saw him, but like, yeah, it's been a minute. But it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Nice, man. I'm glad.
All right, so let's get into this episode. So if you're new to this podcast, we like to break down these episodes into different segments. This first segment is just kind of an excuse for us to check in with each other. We call it What We're Into. So what are you into this week?
So I went back and forth on a few different things that I watched that I could have been into this week, and I flirted with the idea of talking about some stand-up specials that I've seen recently. But to be honest with you, the ones that I've seen are pretty average, and I don't have a ton to say about it. So I'm gonna go back to our roots a little bit, and I'm gonna talk comics this week. So cool. It's probably been at this point not a decade, but it's probably been 7 years since we did a comic segment on the podcast. But it used to be directly what followed the What We're Into segment. We would talk about an issue or a series or whatever every week, and it got a little tiring, and I think that it became a chore for both of us. It felt like I was having to read comics instead of getting to read comics. And so once we cut the segment out of the podcast, I stopped reading them for the most part. Like, I would read them here and there.
Yeah, me too.
And but buying them week to week and buying them issue to issue is something that stopped happening. But, I've always obviously kept my ear to the ground with it, and I'm still, I think, privy to what's going on with the major labels. So this summer, or I guess it was probably earlier this year, I started to hear people talk a lot about a comic called Absolute Batman. And what was exciting to me about it was that it's written by Scott Snyder, who was writing Batman when we started the podcast, and it's one of those runs that we talked about first. And so, Court of Owls, all of that stuff. He's great, and I've always liked his work. And so to hear him coming back to Batman was a draw for me. But I've got to admit, I was a little skeptical when I heard the synopsis. So I don't know what the big event was. I guess there was some big event that set up this universe called the Absolute Universe, and so it's basically adjacent to the stories, and the characters are modified a little bit. And to me, it felt a little bit like Earth One. Batman Earth One is a great comic book, and they've done different characters, and the idea is that it's more realistic and more gritty, and I loved it. But I don't know how many variations like that you can do on the character before it just kind of gets tired. And Lord knows Batman's had plenty of iterations. But the idea behind this one is that you catch up with Bruce Wayne early in his career. I think he's like 24, but he's like this big hulking guy. But in this reverse or different universe, he doesn't grow up rich. So he grows up, his dad is a teacher, and his mom does something blue collar, but I can't remember. And in this universe, Thomas is the only one that gets killed. He gets killed at the zoo on a field trip with Bruce when he was young. And Bruce gets they hide him away in the bat exhibit, and there's all sorts of little nuances like that. But
sure.
But the gist is that Bruce Wayne is, pretty brilliant, and he's this engineer. So by day he's a civil engineer, and because of his talents and him studying abroad and doing some of the abroad stuff that they carry over from the regular Batman stories, he's great at combat. He's still Batman. He's exactly what you'd expect Batman to be. He's the world's greatest detective. He's always one step ahead. It's just he had to go a different route to get there because he doesn't have the money. And so part of that was interesting. But then I also, without knowing much about the comic book, saw some art floating around of him with guns. And that was an immediate turnoff to me too. But, I decided to grab the graphic novel that just came out. It's issues 1 through 6 of Absolute Batman. I think the second graphic novel comes out early next year, but this run is called The Zoo. And I kind of buried the lead, and I kind of set it up for failure with the Batman with a gun thing. But this is probably my favorite take on Batman outside of usual Batman. Like, you're never going to beat the original, but as far as like otherworld stuff goes and the different iterations they've done in the character, I know it's maybe a bit of a gut reflex, but it's pretty awesome. I mentioned the gun stuff. He does have a gun at one point in this comic, but he is very anti-gun, and the gun shoots like these little Batwing type things that are non-lethal. And I guess it's not a huge spoiler. It happens in the first issue, but Alfred is in this comic, except he's an MI6 agent, and he's sent to Gotham because there's this group terrorizing the city, which I'll talk about in a second. But once he starts to track this group, he's been instructed not to engage, and he starts to notice the Batman coming and disrupting and going after him. And so you get it's almost told from Alfred's point of view, at least the first few issues, like his commentary. So even as Batman's going in and fighting this large group of people, he's commenting about how every attack, every injury is close enough to being lethal, but it's not, and how he's precision, like his precision is great. And they go really far out of the way to make it a point to say Batman's not killing and he doesn't kill. And funny enough, the gun he uses at one point was Alfred's, and he redoes it, and yada yada yada. What I'm getting at is, I think when you look at the Batman characters, there's certain things that you can't change, and for me that's one of them. And I'm glad that they didn't shift too far away from the character's principles for a story that's supposed to be about a little bit more, I don't want to say grounded Batman, but it feels a little bit more like Spider-Man in a lot of ways. He lives with his mom's still alive. They come from humble, meek beginnings. He has to be a lot more creative than he would have to be if you could just buy stuff. So it's a really cool take on the character. Before I wrap up, I'll talk about the villains real quick. So the villain for the most part is Black Mask, but you wouldn't know it's Black Mask unless they tell you. And he's got this weird underground criminal organization with people that can disrupt society, and there's hits that you can do, and it's basically just a lot of goons. Like it's their way of they're called party animals, but they wear these animal masks, and the masks tell them like who they can kill to earn money. And it's kind of like this weird sci-fi take on organized crime in a way. And so that's kind of the main villain throughout this, but the end of issue 6 sets up the next villain in a big bad way. So, like I said, I'm not buying it week to week. I'm buying it graphic novel to graphic novel. So I'll have to wait until early 2026 to see where things go from here. But the hype is real, man. It's a good book.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome. I love the idea of reading comic books because I feel like, obviously, that's one of the reasons we started this podcast was just like, we wanted to talk about comic books as well. Like, we love movies and TV, but we also love comic books. And so that was one of the reasons why we started this podcast. And you're right. Towards the end, before we got rid of that segment, it just felt like it was a chore now. I was like, we're literally reading a comic book right before we were recording, just so I would have something to talk about. And so like it definitely got to be a part of like, oh, I have to do this now. And so I'd love to leave open the door that I will eventually read this, but chances are, especially with me getting more and more into gaming, especially in the last couple of years, it's like something's got to give.
Sure. Yeah. There's only so much time, man.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you into this week?
Well, I mean, I brought up gaming just a second ago because I knew I could transition right into what I'm into. So I'm going to talk about Hollow Knight Silksong, which is a much anticipated video game. It's the sequel to one of the best. I mean, it's not my favorite Metroidvania. I would probably lean towards the Ori games because I fucking love those games. But it is definitely one of the best Metroidvania games ever made, and this is its sequel. It's been rumored and talked about for years. There was a lot of accusations that we were never going to get this game. A lot of people were getting impatient because it had been a few years since we gotten any updates. People have described this game as like the Grand Theft Auto 6 of indie games. Like people were waiting and just like literally once they sort of shadow dropped this game. So we hadn't really heard anything about it until Gamescom recently. And then they released a new trailer and it was like, oh, by the way, it's coming out in like 2 weeks. And so like other indie games had to like shift their release dates based on this game. So people were very, very psyched for this game. Like I said, the first game is a phenomenal game. It's not my personal favorite Metroidvania, but it's still a fantastic game. But there are people that like are obsessed with the first Hollow Knight. And I get it. It's a fantastic game. But in this sequel, what I really liked about this sequel, among many other things that I'll get into here in a second, is you actually don't play as the same character from the original game. They wanted to make it different. So you play as Hornet, which is a character from the original game, but it's completely in a different area and it's a completely different character. Hornet, the main character of this game, gets kidnapped by a mysterious group. She gets transported is the word that I'm looking for. Again, I'm very tired. To this new land called Farloom, and she escapes her kidnappers, and she finds out about the Citadel, and she has a lot of questions, so she has to ascend to the Citadel. And what I really like about this character versus the first game is the protagonist. If you never played Hollow Knight, the protagonist of the first game doesn't speak at all. And Hornet, on the other hand, does. And if you know a lot about the Hollow Knight lore, which there's a lot of people that know a lot more than I do, for sure, just Google it and just YouTube it, and they're the whole fucking documentaries about the Hollow Knight lore. So there's a lot to it. But basically, Hornet is essentially this princess in this world, in this mythology. And I really like how she interacts with people in this game because she wants to help people because she's a badass, but she's also like very civil and like courteous, like she's very proper. And so it kind of feels like exactly how a badass like warrior princess would talk to people. So I definitely appreciate that. I like her character quite a lot. But the biggest change from the first game to the second game isn't necessarily that Hornet can talk versus the protagonist in the first game, but it's also just like the way she moves versus the way that the other protagonist moved. She's a lot faster. She moves very sudden. And one thing that definitely took a lot to get used to, obviously with Metroidvanias, most of them have a very strong platforming element to it. And that's one of the reasons why I love these games, is because I've said it before, platforming is my favorite genre. And because these games usually have a lot of platforming in them, I typically dig them. And one of the ways to platform in the original game is you pogo, what people call pogoing. So basically there's a downward slash that you can do, and you can basically bounce off enemies. So if you want to get to a platform that's higher up and there's an enemy kind of hanging out, you can downward slash bounce off of them and get to a different platform. So like pogoing is a big part of the platforming in the original game. And so when the game started, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm sure that we can pogo at some point. Well, Hornet doesn't have a downward slash. She has like a diagonal slash. So I was like, oh, you can't pogo? That's kind of weird. It turns out you can, but you have to like aim her diagonal in order to do it. And it's so weird. I'd imagine it's even weirder for the people that have played the original game for so long and they have that muscle memory, because it took me a while to get used to it. I'd imagine it's taken those other people a lot of time to get used to it. Now, eventually there is a crest that you can unlock that allows you to do a downward slash, but it's kind of behind I would say paywall is probably not the best way to describe it, but you have to buy a key that's worth a lot of currency in order to get to the spot that you can even unlock the crest. So it's worth it maybe, but by the time you do that, you're probably pretty used to doing the pogoing diagonal anyways. It is a little frustrating, but because I have been streaming this game, I spent almost the entirety of a stream just trying to pogo because it was so annoying. But like I said, once you get used to it, it's not too bad. Outside of that, I think the platforming is really fun in this game, as it was in the original game. There's especially a moment where you get a cloak, and there's like these airstreams, and you can kind of like bounce from airstream to airstream and go up and kind of ride them. And that's really, really fun. So I really enjoyed that section where you're kind of riding these airstreams. So that's really fun. The platforming is really interesting. Of course, while you're platforming and kind of going about your business, you will encounter smaller enemies that can be fought either to recover silk, or you can just simply ignore them, because as in many metroidvanias, you're going to kind of like have to go into the same areas more than once. So sometimes you might want to just ignore them if you want. I would suggest at least fighting each little enemy at least once, because you will eventually come across like arenas where it's kind of like a gauntlet where you'll fight like multiple of these smaller enemies at the same time. And so a lot of these smaller enemies kind of have nuances and tricks to beating them. And so if you learn the tricks when you're kind of out and about in the world, those arenas will get a lot easier. Now, I've seen a lot of people complain about how difficult this game is. I don't know if I go as far to say that it's like punishing or anything like that. I think, to be fair, the first game was pretty difficult. So like I went into this game assuming that it was also going to be difficult. Now, the smaller enemies do double damage, and it's harder to heal in this game. By harder, I mean you use all your silk every time you heal, no matter what. And so that makes it a lot more punishing when you do take damage. So I do understand that. I just don't think it's that terribly difficult. And once you get used to it, it's not that big of a deal. The issue I think a lot of people have is with the boss battles. Again, I think difficulty is subjective, and this game is definitely difficult. But I think a lot of it, my perspective, has to do with the fact that I'm so used to playing like Soulsborne games. Like that's just a genre that I've played a lot, especially in the last few years. So in those games, you basically they expect you to have to fight bosses like 5 to 10 times before you beat them. And so for me, when you have to fight a boss 5 to 10 times to beat them, that's not really that difficult. Like the first time, I'm just trying to figure out the moves. The first couple of times, I'm just trying to figure out the moves. And then there's a couple of times where you like know the moves, but you just kind of have to execute. And so like, I don't think that trial and error with these boss battles is that unusual. So like for me, I didn't find it too terribly difficult. Now I haven't beaten the game. I should have mentioned that already. I haven't beaten the game. So maybe I'm speaking too soon, and maybe there's a boss battle that I really struggle with. But for the most part, I've just been really enjoying the boss battles because I think they're really fun. I especially want to point out, right now, my favorite boss so far is Fourth Chorus, which is an Act 1 boss. Only because, first of all, it looks super cool. But second of all, again, I love platforming. And I love when developers, especially in Metroidvanias, incorporate platforming in boss battles, and Fourth Chorus has a really cool platforming thing that you have to do while you're fighting him, and so I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt that the boss also looks really cool, and that honestly can be said about everything in Silksong. Every area is detailed and unique, which is great because, like I said earlier, you kind of have to backtrack a lot, especially if you're like me and get lost in I typically get lost in real life, but I especially get lost in video games, especially metroidvanias. Sometimes I kind of forget where I am and I have to backtrack a lot. And so it's kind of nice to have a game that looks as good as this does and as detailed as this is. There is fast travel, which is nice. There's a creature called the Bell Beast that you do have to defeat. It is kind of an early boss fight, but it's fairly easy. And once you do that, it unlocks the Bell Beast as a fast travel system. So that's good. So there's a little bit of fast travel in it. But there's just a ton of detail in this game. Well, there's one really cool area that has like these little bugs, and they're just kind of in the background. They don't hurt you. You don't hurt them. Like, you don't interact with them at all. But like, you can kill the creatures, and then like their bodies will lay on the ground, and then the ants will come and get them. The little bugs will come and get them and like carry them away. So there's just like really cool, like tiny details if you're paying attention. So I really appreciate that. I think that Team Cherry, the developer that developed both of these games, is kind of a shoe-in for Best Art Direction at the upcoming Game Awards. I think they did an excellent job with this game. The music and sound design are also top-notch, which should come as no surprise, because the first game, the music is composed by Christopher Larkin, who also did this game as well. And Hollow Knight's, the original game, its soundtrack is revered as one of the better video game soundtracks, so it's no surprise that the music is also good in the sequel as well. I should also point out that this was day one Game Pass on Xbox, and I played it on my Xbox Series S, and I have had zero issues whatsoever, zero crashes, no frame rate issues or anything. So I'm very impressed. Like I said, I have not beaten it yet. I've been streaming this, so it kind of, obviously I didn't want to do anything off stream. And so it's been kind of a slow process because of that. And also Silent Hill F comes out tomorrow, so I'll probably hit the pause button on this game to play that game because I'm super excited for that one. So I'm going to give it a provisional 4 stars, but I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, man, I had heard good things about the first game, probably from you, and yeah. So I'm glad to hear this one is living up to it.
Yeah, man, it's great. I love it. Cool.
You ready to hit some nerd news?
Yeah, what do you got this week?
A bunch of trailers. So
yeah,
immediately when we got done recording last week, they released the first trailer for a movie that I've been pretty hyped for, Anaconda, which of course is kind of an interesting take on it. And Paul Rudd and Jack Black star as friends who want to remake the movie Anaconda and go to the Amazon to do so, and then they encounter a real giant snake, and hilarity ensues. So, did you watch this trailer?
I did.
I'm curious to hear what you think, because I remember bringing this up for Nerd News whenever they announced it, because I thought the idea and the premise was so funny and relatively original to do a remake of a movie like that. But I'll be honest, the trailer left me yearning a little bit. I don't know that I laughed at all. And so while I'm not writing it off necessarily, I do wish that I was a little bit more hyped after seeing it.
I mean, I thought it was kind of an interesting concept. Even when you described it way back then, when we first heard about it, I thought it was an interesting concept. Of course, Jack Black and Paul Rudd signed me up, like take my money immediately, because I think just having those two in a movie, especially a movie with this concept, I think is really interesting and it worth the price of an admission, at least in my book. I will say that I do really like snakes, and I think anacondas kind of get a bad rep. So I don't want to be that guy, but it is what it is. So I don't love that. I do think the trailer, and I get it, I totally understand. They have to sell the movie, but I think you find out pretty early in the trailer that they hire a snake, and then that snake doesn't really work out. I guess I don't know why I'm trying to not spoil a trailer that you can see. You've probably seen it already at this point. But yeah, I think that kind of spoils things a little bit, but I think I understand why they did it, just because you have to have the huge snake in the trailer to put asses in seats.
So, for the most part, though, especially from like the animal cruelty aspect of it, or the, you know, protecting the animal aspect of it, you would say your anaconda don't want none.
I'm not going to even justify that with a response. I will say, and I should mention this because I want to push past that stupid joke so quickly. The guy that directed this movie is also, I think he wrote and directed The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which obviously has a kind of unique concept as well. And this movie also has a very unique concept. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I really enjoyed that movie and the concept really worked in that movie. So I am going to give him a little bit longer of a leash than I would anybody else.
Fair. We also got a trailer for another comedy that we talked about in Nerd News when it was announced. I didn't realize it was coming so quickly, but The Chair Company will be premiering on HBO Max next month. This is, of course, from the guys that brought you I Think You Should Leave, which is a sketch show on Netflix that we love. Lots of people love, but we also love. So I was honestly kind of in the same boat as the Anaconda trailer. I didn't necessarily find the trailer for The Chair Company funny, but I don't know what it's supposed to be yet. And I'm obviously going to watch it because I think that those guys are talented and it's going to be great no matter what it is. But I can't say that it gave me the giggles, and I don't think it was supposed to. But I'm still excited to see what the aesthetic of the show ends up being. Yeah,
so obviously I know of Tim Robinson from SNL originally, and then I Think You Should Leave. And I knew of Detroiters, but I hadn't watched it until I became obsessed with I Think You Should Leave. And then we finally got around to watching the Detroiters. So up until that point, I had only known him as the SNL and I Think You Should Leave guy. So the sketch comedy guy. And then when we started watching Detroiters, I was surprised. Now that show is pretty goofy and it has a lot of like really like kind of sketch like jokes in it. But like, I was surprised that they had a really good show that also had like an actual narrative that went through the entire show. And so I was like, oh, well, they can do more than just sketch comedy. And then, of course, you have, even though he didn't write the movie, it feels very much like a Friendship Was I Think You Should Leave type of movie. And so like now that he has proven that he can do like longer form comedy, yeah, I'm really excited for this. I didn't need the trailer to really make me laugh because I just know that I'm gonna love this show. I probably shouldn't say that because that's usually when I get myself in trouble and I'm like, I have too high of expectations for something. But like I've literally never watched anything that he's had a creative force in that I haven't liked.
Yeah, same. So feel the same way. We also got the first official trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu. I referenced some bootleg footage I saw from some con a month ago, but it was different from the actual trailer we got this past week. So I'm interested to hear what you thought.
I mean, it was awesome. I mean, it was exactly what you wanted. I thought that there was they had a lot of fun with Grogu and the Force. Like there was a couple of moments where he kind of used the Force. And so I thought that was pretty fun. They kind of used that for more comedic effect and kind of just him being cute. It's like you want really cool, badass, like Star Wars action, but then you also want him being cute. And I feel like we got both of those things from the trailer. And of course, the shows have been awesome. So I was going to watch this no matter what. And so the trailer kind of just checked every box I needed it to check.
Yeah. I felt the same way. It felt fun. And
yeah, for sure.
That's what I want from Star Wars. So I'm looking forward to it. So we've talked recently in the last couple of months about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. But in the background, we've also talked a few times in Nerd News about a different Frankenstein movie that was in pre-production and that is now in post-production. It's called The Bride. It's directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal and stars Christian Bale, among others. And it's coming out next spring, and we got our first trailer for it. And it's so weird that this movie is coming out like 5 months after Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein movie. And based on the trailers, I don't think Maggie Gyllenhaal's version is going to come out on top. I think the trailer's interesting. I think that, you know, Christian Bale can do very little wrong, and I'm interested to see his take on the character. And obviously the difference is that this one's going to feature the Bride of Frankenstein, whereas the other one's more the traditional story of the character. But yeah, I just think that it's going to be it's going for something a little different, definitely, from the feel of it. And I don't know that audiences are going to be able to connect with it so soon after Guillermo del Toro's version, but who knows? Maybe this time next year I'll be wrong and it'll be in my top 10, but I just have that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give her and everybody involved kudos for it. Feels like they're taking a pretty big swing. It kind of feels like I got a Bonnie and Clyde vibe from the trailer. Like, that's kind of the vibe that they're going for with this movie. And I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, like I said, they're taking a big swing. Christian Bale as Frankenstein, but kind of like a not as monstery Frankenstein, but it has like the bolts coming out. Like, he kind of has the scars on the top of his head. And like, so that he obviously has the Frankenstein features, but he's like, they're not going full Frankenstein. And so I think they're definitely trying to do a different take on the character. And obviously the Bride doesn't have the giant hair and all that stuff. So, yeah, they're taking a swing for sure. I don't think it's going to work, man.
Yeah. I hope it's fucking awesome, but
yeah, me too. Obviously. Yeah.
It's going to go one way or the other for sure. It's going to be really great or really bad.
100%.
All right. So we're talking before we started recording, and you mentioned that PlayStation State of Play was going on today. So I will turn it over to you for some video game shit.
So I didn't get to watch the whole presentation. As I mentioned in our intro, I was busy changing a tire, so I didn't get to see everything. But there was two things I want to mention, and one of them is actually not from State of Play. I kind of cheated. There was a Kojima Productions did their own kind of like showcase stream, and they don't do it very often. And so they did some stuff about like the Death Stranding movie, and I guess there's going to be like maybe an animated TV show if I remember correctly. But they also showed the first like real teaser trailer for Kojima's new horror, I almost said film, horror video game called OD. And it looks cool as fuck. Like, it's definitely a vibes, like psychological, atmospheric horror. It didn't give too much away. It has Beverly from the It. I can't remember her name. It's like Sophie Lillis or something like that. She's in it. It looks amazing. Like, just like the Unreal Engine has gotten insane as far as the detail. Like, in the trailer, she's like lighting candles, and you see a close-up on her face, and you can like see the reflection of the candles in her eyes. It's so like, it's video games has gotten crazy, man. So it looks awesome. It's mysterious. It's like, it's everything I wanted from a Kojima teaser trailer for a horror game. So I'm definitely excited about that. And then today for the State of Play, we did get the first like real trailer for the Insomniac Wolverine game, and it looks exactly like a Insomniac Wolverine game, like the same studio that did the Spider-Man games, which I love those games, which kind of took the combat of the Arkham Batman games and brought it to Spider-Man. I'm assuming they're going to do something very similar with Wolverine. He's in the Wolverine like comic cartoon, that black and bright yellow costume most of the time, but then he's also kind of like the lumberjack Wolverine as well. So that's cool. I will say the only thing that I'm really curious about, and I don't know if this is going to be addressed or not. It wasn't addressed in the trailer, obviously. And if then maybe they addressed it during the actual presentation, but I didn't get to see the actual presentation. But I don't know how you make that character interesting in a video game, because when you're playing as one of these characters, you're going to get hurt, and Wolverine can heal himself. And like in a video game, how are you going to make that interesting? Like, how are you going to make that difficult if I'm playing as a character that is constantly healing himself? Like, like how are you going to make it difficult? So I do think that's kind of an interesting hurdle that they're going to have to get over. I'm not sure if they're even addressing it at all. It'd be kind of weird if they didn't. But then also, there was a Halloween game that they announced as well. I don't know if they had previously announced it or not, but this was the first time I heard about it. And I feel like they really missed an opportunity because they did give us a release date as well. And it's like, man, we're almost to Halloween. Halloween's right around the corner. You could have given us this trailer and been like, oh, by the way, it's out in like 3 weeks or whatever, just in time for Halloween. Nope, it's September next year. I was like, come on, man. Like, you could have got me really hyped. But it's one of those, it's the same studio that did the Friday the 13th video game where you either play as Jason or you play as the survivors. It's like a multiplayer game. Apparently there is going to be a single player element to it, but it's the same studio that did the Friday the 13th and then the Predator game that was very similar as well, the Predator Hunter Ground or something like that. And I'm assuming it's going to basically be the same thing. You're either going to choose to play as Michael, or you're going to choose to play as the survivors. And it's going to be a multiplayer game. And Dead by Daylight's a cool game. I love that people love it, but I just couldn't get into it. And even with the Evil Dead game, when it first came out, I was like, I'm going to get into it because I like this franchise. And then I played it for like 2 days and I was like, I just don't think I like these types of games.
Yeah, I get that. I think that it's just been done so many times at this point, and it's just reskinning it to your favorite Halloween or horror story. So
yeah,
it's a little old, but yeah, I'm definitely going to play the Wolverine game, and the horror game you mentioned sounds interesting as well. So it sounds like good stuff. And I saw a list of games coming out next year. Next year is pretty stacked. So
I mean, this year's been insane, dude.
I don't know about your insane and my insane are different just because you're more in the weeds than I am.
I think that my top four, my top five, actually, I'll take that back. I would put Hollow Knight, even though I'm a little hesitant because I haven't beaten it, but I would put Hollow Knight in my Silksong in my top five as of right now, like a provisional top five. Every single game in my top five would have been my number one last year. Wow. They're all phenomenal. So yeah, it's been a really good year.
Nice, man. That's all I have for nerd news.
All right, cool. So we are going to move on to our main topic, which we're going to do another movie review. We're going to review Him, which is a sports horror film directed by Justin Tipping, who also helped write the script. It was also produced by Jordan Peele. It follows Cam Cade, played by Tyreek Withers, a top prospect in an NFL-style football league, who days before the combine gets attacked and can't perform at the combine. Cam then gets a final shot to prove his abilities in a week-long training boot camp with his idol and current quarterback legend Isaiah White, played by Marlon Wayans. So, we have talked about this before. We are nerds. We love movies, TV, video games. But we're also pretty big sports fans. I especially love football. I am super nerdy about football. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. But I also understand that it is ripe for criticism. There's a lot of things that are wrong with football. There's a lot of things wrong with the way that football is covered, how we obsess over football. And what I really like about horror movies and sci-fi as well is, like, I love horror and sci-fi that kind of points a finger, that has a lot of social satire to it. So I think that the idea of using football to kind of point the finger at some of the things that are wrong with sports and sports fans and stuff like that, and do it in a horror capacity, I think is interesting. And then, of course, I'm a huge fan of Jordan Peele, and this is obviously, like, it's easy to say that this was going for a Jordan Peele, like, Nope vibe, But I mean, you could have told me this is a Jordan Peele movie and I would have believed you. Like, it looked like that's obviously what they were going for. And so because he produced it and because I give him such the benefit of the doubt, I was pretty excited for this movie, even though the trailers there was some red flags going off a little bit while I was watching the trailer.
Yeah, I thought it looked interesting, man. All of the stuff you said about us and football stands true, and I thought the idea of doing a movie like this felt original, and I didn't think it was, trying to hide anything with this marketing necessarily, but I thought that it had a lot of potential. It seemed really original to me, really creative, and from the trailer, it looked like it was going to be a bit of a mind fuck. So I was eager to see it, even as I started to see that it didn't have the best Rotten Tomatoes score. I was still definitely interested to see what this movie was. Yeah,
I've mentioned this before, but I try to stay away from that. But with this, it was kind of hard because I was seeing, like, I didn't read the review, but like I went on IGN and they gave it like a 4 or 5. And for IGN to give something a 4 or 5, that meant they really didn't like it, because that's kind of the meme with them. It's like everything just gets a 7 no matter what.
I saw one review on Twitter that told me everything I needed to know. And it was just a like quote tweet from the movie. And the person said, "This happened to my buddy Antonio Brown once." And I thought that was funny.
All right, so let's get into him. So as we always do with our main topic, we like to break it down into different segments. We start off with this, what we call broad strokes, which is just kind of a general overview. Then we'll move on to story, performances, so on and so forth. So how'd you feel about him?
So this movie was a mind fuck, but not in a good way. It's for the most part not really good. It's interesting though, because I think the things that they would do with it had potential. I think this movie brushes shoulders with something that would have been really special, because I've not seen a movie like this. I've not seen somebody take something like football and turn it into this horrific satanic thing. And I was excited for what this movie might do with it, but unfortunately it feels like it was just really picked apart and disjointed at some point. And I don't know if that's how the script was. I don't know if that happened in post-production, but this movie is not subtle in the least. And when it's all said and done, all of the ideas that it presents to you throughout this movie kind of feel like they don't tie together. There's a lot of big things that this movie sets up, and a lot of big moments that don't pay off. And it just feels, again, like it's hard to connect all the dots in the plot once you wrap up with everything. Like I said, it has moments where I perked up a little bit, and I was kind of interested in what they might do, because I do think the concept is cool and interesting, and from that standpoint, it did keep me engaged. I also think that the movie shot really well. It's got good visuals. There's definitely some things for them to celebrate in that regard, but unfortunately it just misses the mark for the most part, and it ends up being pretty forgettable and something that I will likely never watch again.
Oh, I'll definitely never watch this movie again. So it's funny that you say like the movie had potential, because that's literally the first note I have in my broad strokes. This movie had potential. Like I was kind of setting it up as we were talking about this movie, like our expectations going into it. I think that this movie had some interesting things, that it had a lot of interesting themes. It had a lot of like satire that it wanted to try. And I think that your point is about it kind of being disjointed and kind of missing the mark and kind of feeling incomplete is a good one, because that's kind of how I felt as well. It does a good job of kind of setting up these points of like shining a light on our obsession with sports and athletes and all this stuff, and putting them on a pedestal. And they even say at one point that Isaiah his fans are kind of like cult members, and there's kind of like this weird like satanic thing going on with his fans, and you're not quite sure what's happening with it. And we'll get into more of that with the story segment. But I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of like this idea. Like, we do take this too far sometimes, and I think we get obsessed with people way too often and all this stuff. And I will say that I do understand the irony of me saying all that. As I was watching this movie, I was by myself, by the way, then there was nobody else in the theater. I had my phone pulled up on ESPN Gamecast because I was watching this movie as a Monday Night Football game was going on, and I wanted to make sure that I was still going to beat Tyler in fantasy football. So I understand the irony of watching a movie like this while I had my phone pulled up with ESPN to make sure that I was still going to beat Tyler, which I did. I also wanted to weave that into the episode that I beat Tyler last week in fantasy football. But anyways, and I'm also glad that you brought up the shots and like the cinematography and like just the artistic choices that they made with this film. Very cool. They obviously have a great eye. They really over stylized this movie, which I appreciate. They kind of went a little too far. I think they kind of got a little too cute. They kind of did this it reminded me a lot of, bringing it back to video games, but it reminded me a lot of, I love Mortal Kombat games, and occasionally you can do what they call X-ray moves, where you can like see the bone, and they did that a couple of times in this movie, and I was like, I saw it in the trailer, so I knew it was coming, but that was a little too much for me, but not like it wasn't hard to watch or anything. I just thought it was like a little too cute. So that was that I liked that they made some interesting choices. Some of it wasn't my taste, but ultimately, I just thought that the story was kind of a hot mess. I had a lot of issues with the story, which we'll get into. A lot of it was, hey, you kind of introduced this thing, but it doesn't really pay off that much. And so there's a lot of that. But I like the idea of a sports horror movie. I think that's a cool concept, especially with football. I think it's ripe for that type of movie. And we'll get into the horror in its own segment. The horror stuff just really didn't work for me.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so let's talk about the story, and obviously we'll start off with the main character, Cam.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's a lot of problems with this movie, so I can't say necessarily Cam is the biggest problem, but I think that they really failed the character. For a movie like this, you've got to be super bought into the protagonist, and I don't think that the movie does the work to get you there. You know, they try to add some emotional anchors by, showing a flashback at the beginning of the movie featuring Cam's dad that you find out has passed away when you catch up with the present. But that's about as much as they do to make you sympathetic to the character. And it could be performances a little bit too. But I think part of the reason I never engaged with what was happening was because I wasn't engaged with Cam. I think that the character makes silly, stupid decisions that are, just based on moving the plot along. And he's almost, he reminds me, and I don't mean this as a compliment, he reminds me of Patrick Mahomes because he's just kind of like personalityless. And so I don't know if that's the mold they were going for, since he's, the hot quarterback, especially when they were making this movie. But you got to root for the main character, and I never did.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you brought up the dad stuff, because I thought that first scene was really interesting. The idea of like making sacrifices and kind of like being a man and kind of going all out for being obsessed with this sport, I thought was kind of an interesting way to set it up. But like you said, and I don't know if this was like maybe a reshoot or something like that, but like you catch up with Cam as an adult, and he's getting out of college. He's about to go into, I'm going to say the NFL draft. I can't remember. It was like some other thing, because they couldn't get the NFL license. Obviously, the NFL is not going to sanction this type of movie. And so, but I'm just going to say the NFL draft. So he's about to go into the NFL draft, and his dad's dead. His dad's a Marine. His dad died overseas. Like, they don't ever play that angle up that much. So I don't know why they chose that angle. He's not a Marine in the first scene that we see him. All of a sudden he's dead, and he was a Marine. And there's a lot of like little things that make me think that there was more to this movie because they even mentioned in like a quick montage that Cam walked on to college and then he was a 4-year starter and now he's the consensus number 1 pick and all this stuff. And later in the movie, you find out that he was going to walk away with football. I don't know. Like I feel like I'm kind of doing the mental gymnastics for this script, but it's like, did he try to walk away and that's why he was a walk-on? Like he eventually, because he talks about how there was a connection with his dad about why he continues to play football even though he was originally going to walk away. Again, all of this stuff is just said by Cam in a scene. Like it's not like there's no subtext or anything. He literally just says all of it, which is annoying to begin with. But again, I agree with a lot of that you said. What you said is like some of this stuff that's interesting is just never explored and just kind of incomplete. My biggest issue is not necessarily just with Cam, but there's a lot of things about the film's plot that I have an issue with revolving around Cam. And I'm going to rant for a little bit, and I know a lot of people aren't going to care, and this is a horror movie, and they're probably just going to react as, shut the fuck up, like just suspend your belief, it's a horror movie, who cares? But none of the football shit makes sense in this movie. So I'm going to just again, start by saying if he is the consensus number 1 pick, he gets attacked, literally attacked. He gets injured in the attack while he's doing a extra workout late at night, getting ready for the combine. People would never shut up about that. They would give him so much credit and such a long leash because he got attacked while working out. People, I just know how the sports media works. They would never shut the fuck up about that. So the fact that he was the consensus number 1 pick going into the combine, the last 2 number 1 pick quarterbacks in the actual NFL draft, neither of them did anything at the combine. They still went number 1. So the concept of this movie is that because he got attacked, he can't work out at the combine. And because of that, he's not going to get drafted at all now. He went from possibly being the number 1 pick to not getting drafted at all. That does not happen. It does not happen. This entire plot is a huge house of cards that if you think about for 30 seconds, immediately falls down. Then the concept goes from that to your last chance is that you have to work out, not with the team. Don't try out with the team, but the quarterback that you might be taking their job from. That makes no sense. First of all, it's not how undrafted free agency works, but it's just like crazy. They just wanted to get Cam and Isaiah together. They didn't care how they did it. They just wanted to get him together. And for me, I know that I'm watching a horror movie. I know that I'm watching a movie in general, and you have to suspend your belief. But there's so many different layers to it. And as a football fan, especially a draft, I love the NFL draft, mostly because I love the game theory about the NFL draft. And so I'm obsessed with it. So I know way too much about how all of this stuff works. It's really hard for me to like suspend my belief this far. So I had a huge problem with like the first act of this movie. And it's like, again, getting him to Isaiah makes 0 sense.
Yeah, thanks for clearing that up for everyone.
Everyone just stopped listening. All right. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something else, but it's cool. So let's just move right ahead to Isaiah.
Yeah, I don't think Isaiah is a bad horror movie villain. I think that Marlon Wayans tries his absolute hardest in this role, and he I don't want to say he's an interesting character, but there are layers there that I was interested in seeing being pulled back. Like if there was anything that kept me engaged with the plot of this movie, it was finding out what the fuck's going on with Isaiah. And it may not make sense, and it may not pay off, and it may be for nothing, but there was an intrigue there for me. And I think that, to your point earlier, like, we've never seen really football and horror mix like this. And him being this maniacal force with a somewhat cult following, both figuratively and literally, like, I don't know. It's an interesting character. I don't think that Isaiah is the problem with this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they had something here, and we'll get into performances later, but I think that Marlon Wayans did what he could with this character, but we'll get to that here in a second. I just don't think that they paid anything off. There's a lot of weird things that happen in this movie for no reason. And we'll talk about the horror in a few segments, so I don't want to kind of blow my load as far as that's concerned, but there's a lot of like artistic weird things that happen in this movie for no reason. We never find out why. Like, we don't really know exactly what happens. And I also, again, not to kind of piggyback off what my little rant there, but also the whole concept of this movie is that there has to be a GOAT, like the GOAT player, and then there can only be one, and they kind of like battle for it. And it's like, so just every so often the best player in the league, instead of retiring, just dies. Like, that would be a pretty fucking weird thing that somebody would investigate eventually. Like, why are the best players just dying all of a sudden? So that's a little weird. I don't exactly know how that works out. They do try to like, kind of like bring it together at the end, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And they kind of just like tied it together and what I assume they thought was a pretty neat little bow, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But the character of Isaiah is interesting. I think there could have been like a different like satanic element. That's what I thought it was going for, and that's not really exactly what they went for. And there's like this whole thing with him like watching film, and you find out what film he's actually watching, and that's kind of an interesting concept, but again, it's not really explored. So like there's a lot of like little stuff that I thought was interesting, and then just again, I don't know if this was cut up, and maybe the full like director's cut is even more of a mess, and they kind of cut it down to the thing that made the most sense. I don't know, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in here, and ultimately it felt like one of those movies where they kind of just threw everything against the wall and saw what stuck the best, and that's what they went with.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I agree for sure.
All right, so I honestly didn't really have a ton that I wanted to say about this last character, but we always just threw 3 story points, so I threw them in here. I don't really have a whole lot to say about Marco.
Yeah, you sent me the story points earlier so I could prepare, and I was like, who the fuck is Marco? I had to remind myself.
I had to look up his name in the movie.
I had to remind myself of who Marco was, and then when I did, I was like, what does he want to talk about here? Like, the only thing I could think about is that he's a Jim Jeffries fan. And
I used to like Jim Jeffries. He's fine.
Yeah, so I don't have much to say about the character outside of, speaking about inconsistencies. I found the character very inconsistent. It seems like he's on one side at one point and then flip sides at another point, and maybe I missed something, but I don't really ever feel like there was a reason why, and things just kind of happened subtly with the character, and he was just background noise to me.
Yeah, so the only really interesting thing, well, first, there's a couple of things. One, he's not in that much as an actor. And so I'm just like very confused why. I mean, probably just wants a job, but also it's like him, what's his name? Tim Heidecker is also in this movie. It's like, what drew them to this movie? Like, 2 comedians are in this movie. I'm just like, there's not that much funny shit that happens in this movie. Obviously, there's a couple of like dark humor things in here, but I just kind of was a little confused by why they were in this. But there's like one scene with Marco that's kind of interesting, where he kind of like spills his soul to Cam about like this job sucks, and it's like not what I expected it to be, and it's like I went in here trying to help people, and it's kind of like he feels like he's more of an enabler, and it's not what it seems, all this stuff. And then the character, something just happens to the character that's never explained, and it's just like, oh, they're done with you now and they need you to go away. And so that was kind of weird. And a lot of stuff happened. There's a lot of examples of that where it's just like, we needed you for a cool scene, now go away.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
All right. So let's move on to performances.
Yeah, man. they're hard to nail down. I have a hard time with performances in this movie because I don't know what's them and what's the material.
Sure.
So Tyreek Weathers, he is not somebody I know from a ton of stuff. He was in the I Know What You Did Last Summer remake, reboot, whatever over the summer, and I thought that he was not great in that. And I honestly don't think he was great in this either. I think Marlon Wayans is not bad considering it's Marlon Wayans. I think that he does the character really well, and he obviously he gives it 110%. There's no doubt about that. So I honestly didn't bump up to against his portrayal of Isaiah. But then the supporting cast too. You mentioned the comedians in it. It's tough. I don't really have an opinion on Jim Jeffries, but I'm a huge Tim Heidecker fan, and I want to root for his stuff. And I can't root for him in this one. I don't think that he's a problem, but also I'm so used to him from Tim and Eric and his other stuff and on movies, at the movies, like all of the funny things he does, that it's hard for me to take him seriously in this movie, even though he is kind of this cartoon character in a way too. So Julia Fox is also in this movie. I know her mostly from Uncut Gems, but she's gained fame over the last few years. I think that she's fine as well. I don't know that anybody's
I forgot
awful.
her character was even in this movie.
I don't know, man. It's just, I think that the script is a bigger disservice, or even what happened in production with this movie. If something, was changed in post, I think that that's the bigger problem than any of the performances.
Yeah, I mean, the movie is just, the story is so disjointed that it's kind of hard to tell. Like I said, with Julia Fox, it's like her character is barely in it. And it's kind of like all over the place with her. Like she'll be in it and then 20, 30 minutes will go by and then you see her again. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, you're in this movie. So it's kind of hard to tell with her performance. I thought she was fine. Marlon Wayans, I thought he was really good in this movie. And then there was moments where he was really bad. And I just think that and for me, that's a director problem. Because, like, I think that he does some of, like, when he is at an 8, I think he was really good in this movie. But then he goes to an 11, and I was like, you need to rein that shit back in. And that's just an actor giving his all, and as a director, you need to rein that in. And so, like, there was some moments that were really cringy for me with his acting, and I feel like, again, that's more on the director than it is the actor. And so I thought he was pretty good in this movie overall, like an average of everything that he had going for him. I thought he was actually pretty good, and it's not a performance that you would expect from him. And so because he's also a comedian, and so I thought that was pretty good. I thought Tim Heidecker was fine. He plays kind of a scummy agent, and I think he kind of plays that character, like I said, fine. Jim Jeffries is barely in this movie as Marco. Again, I'm not quite sure what drew him to this role, but yeah, I think that's pretty much everybody in this movie that I wanted to mention. Oh, Tyreek Weathers. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with it. I think there's a couple of moments where I thought he was pretty good, but I just didn't connect with the character. And again, that's more story than anything else.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's talk about horror.
There's no horror, man. It's just, it's weird shots.
Weird shit and jump scares.
Yeah, for sure. So, for a movie that I had thought could be a really cool psychological thriller, it was not.
I think there is a lot of, like, cool elements in this movie. Like, we've kind of been complaining about this entire time with the story, but also with the horror, because of the artistic choices they were making. There's some really interesting things that they choose to do, especially like early on. You see him get attacked, and it's like this person in this really, like, you're not sure if it's a person or if it's a monster, or like, and that's never explored. It's just like a scene that you get to see him get attacked, and then that was it. And there's like some really cool visuals in this movie, but they never really tie back into the actual plot of the movie. I actually think some of the horror stuff kind of drags this movie down because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, there's a moment where Cam gets attacked in a sauna, And it's just like this weird scene where it's like, why did that even happen? Like, literally, why did that even happen? It didn't have anything to do with the movie. It just felt like, again, it was one of those, oh, this is a horror movie, so we have to put something horror adjacent in this movie. There's a scene early on in the training, and you've probably seen it in the trailer, because I saw it in one of the many trailers of this movie I saw, where this guy literally just stands in front of a jugs machine, and every time Cam fucks up, he gets hit in the face with a football. Why the fuck did that happen? Why did he sign up to do that? That's never explained. And so I think that there's just things in this movie that are literally just in it because they wanted something weird and creepy and horror adjacent in this movie. And maybe they made sense in the director's cut that we keep referencing, but it didn't make sense in the movie that we saw.
Agreed.
All right, so out of 5 stars.
I'm giving it a 2 out of 5.
I am giving a 2 as well. It's not good.
No, it's a total bummer. This is supposed to be when we're getting jacked up for Shocktober when it starts next week. I don't want to be brought down by bad horror movies already.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. You ready for Nerd Favorite?
Yeah, so it's your turn to pick the topic. So what is Nerd Favorite this week?
Yeah, so I left that out of nerd news because it's not really a huge nerd news story. But Matt Reeves has been out and about doing interviews for something or another, and he commented that he's excited about the villain for the Batman Part 2, and he dropped the nugget that it is a villain that has not been done in live action yet. And so I thought we could have a friendly game of let's guess the Batman Part 2 villain. I think this movie goes into production in the new year, like right when 2026 starts, I think January. And so I imagine we will find out the answer to this question by the time the year is done as they cast that movie. But I'm curious to hear your guess. So knowing the Batman, knowing the aesthetic, and knowing, I guess the other point that he made that they're like, this is going to be a character. They're going to dive more into Bruce. Are you laughing because they've like announced it since we started recording?
No. I think I know who you're going to guess.
Okay. I'm just going to cut to the chase then. I'm going to go with Hush. I think.
Oh, that's not who I thought. That's
okay.
not who I thought.
Yeah. I was mentioning, I think that Matt Reeves also mentioned that this story was going to get more into the Bruce Wayne aspect of it because they don't touch on Bruce a ton in the Batman. And so I think Hush kind of sets that story up. I don't know how you get to the kicky punchy stuff with Hush, and I'm sure they'll figure that out. But from a detective standpoint, I think that it could be pretty cool.
So who I thought you were going to pick is the Court of Owls. You already mentioned that was Zack Snyder. Yeah. So that would be pretty dope. I didn't know that he had said that it hadn't been in live action, and I don't know if he classifies Gotham as live action, but
I doubt it. I doubt it. I think he meant like the movies.
I think technically Birds of Prey, there was a Victor Saz as well, because that would have been who I would think. I don't know if he could carry his own movie though.
Yeah, I also don't think cool. I don't think Matt Reeves is standing around with a checklist. Like he's probably talking about main villains and is talking off the cuff. So
yeah, so maybe I'm thinking too much into it. Like I said, I don't know if he could carry his own movie, but like one of the things that I loved about Batman, the Matt Reeves Batman, among many, many other things, is like you finally really got to see him as the world's greatest detective, like investigating Riddler and kind of figuring out his riddles. And I think that would be kind of interesting, kind of having like hunting and like doing the detective work on Victor Zsasz. So I think that would be kind of cool. Again, I think that you would probably have to throw somebody else in there. Maybe a Hugo Strange would be pretty cool. I don't know how they would mix together, but like, I think there would be kind of you could also do like Killer Croc or something like you could throw somebody else in there as well. But yeah, I think that would be kind of cool, but Court of Owls would be dope. That would be so cool.
Yeah. I think that would be awesome. I'd prefer that to Hush.
You did ask me to pick who I thought, and I just named like 5 different things. So I kind of did like the fantasy football thing where I guessed a bunch of people. And so like, I can't be wrong.
Your final answer is Court of Owls. That's what we're rolling with.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take that. But I mean,
For sure.
Just remember I said a bunch of other ones too, so I'm going to take credit for that when that happens.
Fair.
All right, so that is it for episode 528 of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. Of course, we hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe, rate, review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, basically whatever podcast you're listening to us on right now. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Those are both at The Nerds Podcast. You can check out all of our content on our website, thenerdspodcast.com. And finally, you can email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt.
we are the Nerd You're Looking For. Take it easy, nerds.
Later, guys.